Thank you for tuning in today. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm your host, Daniel Davis. Well, we've certainly tried to help bail out Wall Street, but now there seems to be a ripple effect that's probably to the levels that maybe even measure up to the Great Depression. Joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program today is somebody who's going to at least give us a better perspective than I think in many ways that we've been getting from the news that should be much better than. After all, we're kind of sick of people who call themselves economists always rationalizing and saying the same things over and over and over again. We want to find out what the real deal is. Our guest joining us today is author of Build Your Money Muscles, which I don't find too many economists doing themselves. And she's here to talk with us today about the fear and the financial crisis and kind of look deeper into the matter a little bit as we like to do here on the program. And Joe Sotkin, we'd like to thank you for joining us here on the program today.
It's my pleasure. Great to be here.
Geez, nothing like having a money expert like yourself, unlike one of those Harvard economists, to try to sort things out here on something as chaotic as the roughness that we're beginning to feel here when it comes to money.
Right, and being an optimist, I always look for where's the good. And I've been spending a lot of time on the Internet reading stories, and there really are bits and pieces of good news that are in there. Mm-hmm. It is going to turn around at some point, but it's not going to be what it was. And to me, that's the good news. The good news is that people are becoming much more aware of their money and their relationship to it. They're becoming aware that they're going to have to make some changes in the way they spend and earn, and it's going to be a whole nother world, and it's going to be a little uncomfortable for a while because you don't just create a new paradigm, pop into it, and go, oh, wow, it feels like home. We have to go through the moving stupids, which is where you move from one house to another, and you really want to be in the new place. And with this thing, not everybody thinks they want to be in the new place, and you have to get used to it, and you get kind of stupid while you're learning new behaviors. But we have to behave differently. We can't sustain this lifestyle where 75% of the people are spending more than they earn.
Now, would you agree, because this is something that I have read about and came to understand, that during the Reagan era now, when Jimmy Carter was president, he was really big about telling people or suggesting, it's a good idea to live within your means, to not move beyond that, and to be more of a public servant, if you will, community, to be involved with your community, things such as that. Then Ronald Reagan kind of stepped into office, and they created this whole term around him called Reaganomics, and his whole idea and philosophy, buy now, get what you want now, and don't worry about it. And did you see that that's probably where the transformation of America and their money habits might have began, or do you think it was even before that?
Well, see, the thing is, I don't know that you can put it to one thing, because back then, credit wasn't this available.
Right.
I mean, the problem is the easy availability of credit and the advertising that enticed people to live beyond their means. In other words, it became okay to want the credit card, to want to use the credit card. I love that Visa commercial where people are online and they're paying for things, and they swipe the card, and then someone comes along and writes a check. And all the activity stops, as if it's the worst thing someone could do is to write a check. You should be using your Visa card because the transaction is so much faster.
Right.
So the problem is we haven't been taught how to be fiscally responsible. When I was a kid, which was a really long time ago, we used to have savings accounts at school, where we would bring our 25 cents a week and put it in a savings account. Well, that's so far away from where we are today and what people are being taught. And you don't come out of your mother's womb knowing how to manage money, and it has been to the advantage of those in power to keep us financially ignorant. Because if we understood what we were doing with our money, they wouldn't have made so much money. It's their greed and our greed combined that has really been the problem. People, go ahead.
I was going to say that that's exactly what we've talked about a few times here on the program, is that this is really a culmination where everybody is really truly accountable. Sure, these guys up on the top probably made mistakes that really helped this landslide, but really we're all involved in this.
We were there with our eyes open. I mean, does it make any sense that you should be able to buy a house with no money down, and that you can't afford the payments? The whole idea of balloon payments now. There have been unscrupulous mortgage salespeople, and the older people who were bamboozled into these things, and they're losing their houses now. That's terrible. But for the most part, people were perfectly willing to pay 25% interest on credit cards. Mm-hmm. I mean, I have used credit cards to finance my business. When I printed my book, I spent over $50,000, and I financed it. But I don't pay more than 8%. 8% to me is a lot of interest. Most of what I pay on credit cards is in the 4 and 5% range. Now, you can do that when you have a good FICO score. So there's nothing wrong with using credit cards if you have good credit and you maintain that. But you have to be willing to accept the risk. But the way people were signing up for credit cards without any concern about how much interest they were paying, they never said, okay, I'm going to buy this thing. What is it really going to cost me? And that to me was selective ignorance. I don't want to know. I just want the TV set today. Mm-hmm. So, yes, I think we're all responsible. And I think that what is happening now in the long run is going to be an excellent experience, because we aren't going to get down as far as we did with the Depression. It's not going to get that bad. But credit, what is the biggest problem right now in the financial markets? It's credit is tight. Now, it's tight for businesses, and so businesses are going to have to lay off people, and there's going to be damage done. But it's a cleanup thing. I mean, I know successful business people who never use credit. I have one person in mind who had a business with lots of employees, and he had a very large line of credit that he never used. So it is possible to build a business without borrowing. We just have never learned how to do it.
Now, there's a lot of fear, obviously, when people turn on the news or they read the newspaper about this whole financial crisis. And you can even hear in the presidential race and the vice presidential race, there is a lot of concern and of how this is all going to turn out now. And talking about relating to the fear that people are allegedly feeling about this, what do you think is that fear precisely?
Fear of dying. If I run out of money, I'm going to be all alone and I'm going to die.
Really?
Yeah. Oh,
that
yeah.
Seems simple enough.
I mean, that's basically.
I figured it'd be like the fear of public speaking or something.
Yeah. No. That's basically what it is. If I run out of money, I won't have any resources. I'll be all alone and I'll die. Because humans instinctively know that if they're alone, they can't survive. So we're dealing with survival instinct. And just because your investment account is down today doesn't mean it's going to be down 20 years from now. Now, the people, to me, who are suffering the most are the people who retired based on a belief that the stock market was not a risky investment. The stock market has always been a risky investment. If you listen to what they say that the best returns come from the stock market over time. But unless you've got 20 years to deal with the stock market, if you're 70 years old and you want to retire, then you probably shouldn't have a lot of money in the stock market, because that's a risky investment. I was really surprised to learn. She was on, Susie Orman was on CNN one day, and she said that 95% of her money is in municipal bonds. tax-free municipal bonds. And she knows more about the stock market than most people I ever talk to, and she's in municipal bonds. People are in the stock market because they want to make a lot of money. It's that greed factor, because there have been people who have made a lot of money in the stock market, and so they want to make a lot of money in the stock market. But if you're going to make a lot of money in the stock market, you're taking a risk. And that risk is coming back to haunt people now.
Now, when you talk about the stock market and people who invest, obviously we're hearing a lot of stories about people who are just losing their shirts, it seems like, or just the other day I was talking with a friend who has lost right around $30,000, give or take.
In real money or on paper?
It was probably on paper, is what I guess,
so
because it was a mutual fund.
Okay,
but the point is he was actually optimistic. He says, it kind of sucks, but at the same time, I know that eventually I might recapture those gains back. So, he's in it for the long haul. I said, but what's sad about the money that you lose there is the compounding effect that you miss out on. Now, understanding, for instance, Warren Buffett's investment philosophy, he doesn't get into the stock market. He actually buys companies, and that goes for buying pieces of companies that have longevity, that have probably been through these things before, and they're still moving along. Coca-Cola could be a good example of that. And so when you see people the way that we're describing, who have all their stories about money that they're losing in the stock market, their pension funds, their 401ks, they've invested in what were considered traditional routes that really had very little personal control, and now they're beginning to feel those effects. So do you think the new paradigm is that maybe we might start moving away from those types of ways of, say, retirement planning into something that will be quite different?
Well, I think that people are going to have to reassess what they want from their investments.
Okay.
In other words, if you're trying to make a 15% a year return, you're taking on risk. And there's no such thing as risk without a downside at some point. That's why it's risky. It didn't get to be risky because it was on its way up all the time. And I mean, when you buy a house, it's a risk. And what we're going to have to learn in this new paradigm is sober, sensible financial management strategies, which include spend less than you earn. Such a basic principle. How can you build wealth if you don't spend less than you earn? So that if you earn, say, $50,000 a year or $60,000 a year, you have to see it as $40,000 or $50,000 a year, and just forget about that other 10, and then you have an investment fund. But then there's this whole other piece that when people talk about money, they never look at, which is what your emotional needs are that are being acted out through your financial situation. Now, people who are losing money, the feelings that they're experiencing, they're using their money to act out a group of feelings that have been with them for a long time and haven't been expressed. Not everyone feels awful today. I don't feel awful. And what I've been doing during the last couple of weeks is I've been watching the stock. I have two monitors, two computer monitors, and I'm keeping CNBC on NBC.com on one monitor and watching the movement of the market. And the first couple of days, even though I don't have much in the market, I was getting very nervous. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to use this as a way of detaching. Because the fact is, the situation is not good or bad. It is just the situation. Whether we see it as good or bad, or whether we get anxious or detached, is what we bring to the situation. And I'm choosing to learn how to be detached no matter what's going on. Because the situation is not asking me to get upset. That's a decision that I'm making that I bring to the situation. So when I can come to this situation and say, okay, if I'm detached about this, what can I learn from this? And really what I'm learning is to see if there's a way to anticipate market moves. If I'm in fear, then I can't possibly do that. If I'm detached, then I can. And what can I learn from the stories I read if I get my own fear, shame, and anger out of the way? Because what you have is, you'll have one commentator say it's the worst day in the world, and another story says Warren Buffett is buying, and another story says it's going to turn around, that we're hitting the bottom. So there's no way of knowing what's going on. What's really at play here is our fear, our aversion to uncertainty. And we have no idea where this is going or what's going to happen. We're going to survive. We're going to turn it around. It's just going to be a period. I'm not even going to say uncomfortable. It's going to be a period of learning how to do something differently. That's all it is.
Mm-hmm.
So if you take it personally, like look what the market's doing to me, then it's going to feel a whole lot worse than if you say this is just a phase that the world is going through. It's happening all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's
really interesting because when you talk about the fear part about it, it's really, to me, now I know I'm sure people are experiencing some slightly rough times in this situation, but it seems the news is broadcasting more of the fear than, as you're suggesting, truly exists.
Not necessarily. I mean, it's like I just read a story, the cover story in Newsweek magazine this week, by Fareed Zakaria, I think his last name is. It's a very realistic appraisal of what's going on and how we all can benefit from this. It's a matter of us stop being little children in the corner going, I want what I want when I want it.
Right.
And understand how life works. We've been acting like spoiled little children who want all the toys in the neighborhood, and we don't want to pay for it. And we want our what money we're not using to bring the highest possible return without having any risk. It doesn't work that way. So that I think what's happening now in terms of, right now we are facing a huge planetary crisis way beyond the financial crisis, and that is global warming. And if we don't stop consuming, we're not going to stop global warming. What if whoever is running this show has said we better do something to get these people to stop consuming so that the planet can survive? Well, this is a great idea, isn't it? We're all going to become more conscious. So, being on the optimistic side of life, I never see anything as bad. I just see it as an opportunity to move in a new direction.
Mm-hmm.
And if we'll stop crying about what's going on and learn to work together, maybe we should start bartering. Maybe we should start creating community groups that work together. Put the we back in wealthy, where it's about us, not just me. We've been living in a very me, satisfy me society. And I think it's time to think about us and the planet. So you're talking to someone who doesn't think what's happening is awful. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, I think it's got a very good upside.
Well, I certainly agree with you, and it's funny when you talk about global warming, and that in the final presidential debate, when they were talking about energy and wanted specific numbers, and John McCain suggested that we should go out and build a bunch of nuclear power plants, and that was his answer to the problem, to get us away from using foreign energy supply. But then Barack Obama comes back and says, well, wait a minute, what we need to understand is that, we have 3% of the oil reserves, but yet we're consuming 25% of what's out there.
Right.
What we need to do is rethink exactly as you were saying about how we're consuming this and change that. And I thought, well, that makes a heck of a lot more sense than what McCain was talking about, because even though you got the power plants up, people are still going to want to drive their cars, drive to and from work and vacations and whatnot. And what Barack Obama had said just made more sense just in that context alone.
Right. It's shared sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
this is why I think it's wonderful that's happening. We're becoming more conscious. We're becoming conscious of each other and our needs, and that reaching out to each other and feeling connected is really more important than the latest iPod.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to do this. Our survival depends on it. The survival of the planet. When the water starts creeping up on the shores of the coastal areas of our country, it's going to be too late. We have to start doing something now, and the answer really is not consuming as much. I'm someone, my entertainment was shopping to a certain extent, and I like to go to TJ Maxx and see what I can find. I haven't bought any new clothes in the last year. And, I'm not suffering.
I remember one time watching a piece of an Oprah Winfrey show where they were talking to celebrities, whose family keeps hitting them up for money because they were rich celebrities.
Right.
And one of the funny things that she had said is she said she was amazed that one time apparently she had, I think it was a cousin, I can't remember, but had called because she really needed to talk with her. There was a big emergency, and so when she got in touch with this person, apparently the emergency was that her other Mercedes had broken down and she needed a new Mercedes. That was the emergency.
Right.
And it's funny that you're so right that when it comes to something like when we're paying attention to the news and they're about to give $700 billion over to the Wall Street fat cats, and that's the perception that people have. And pretty soon you got all these executives are going to just be lining their pockets. And sometimes when you take a look at just that vision alone, let's just say that it exists, that people are going, that's a bunch of junk. I'm a taxpayer and you're going to give my money over to this guy that's been making, 10 times probably what I'm making because I'm struggling and you need my money now. And I wonder if the underlying attitude to that simply says, it upsets me that I don't get to be you.
Yes, but there has to be more consciousness on the part of the executives. I mean, we're living in an unconscious world where it is with the selfishness. What I find amazing is that we keep being told that we live in a Christian society, but it's not behaving like one. This is not about taking care of the poor. It's about taking care of me.
Right.
It's not about loving our neighbors. It's about getting the most I can. I mean, it's a cockeyed system. And this is why I think that it's a good thing that's happening. It's an uncomfortable thing for a lot of people, but until we learn to function as a unit and for us to vote in our interest, it is amazing to me how many people vote against their own interests because of something someone said. Like Barack Obama hangs around with terrorists, which is the most ridiculous thing that they came upon. What I'm impressed about with Obama's thing is the community organizing that's being done, and that's being done with an eye so that after the election, there are community organizations in place so that we can act as a unit, act as people who care about each other and who help take care of each other. And to me, that is what we have to be able to do in order to survive. I have a problem with all the prosperity teachers who are teaching, the whole law of attraction thing and The Secret, where it's all about how much stuff you get. To me, prosperity is how much love is in your life, how peaceful you are, and how connected you feel. And to me, that's where it's got to go.
Well, that certainly makes sense because after all, part of why people believe they want to become wealthy is the fact that they'll have more time to allegedly do those things. Because
and
after
all, you can
only they can only buy so much before they realize that, well, I don't know if I'm that satisfied, and it's not to take a look at this whole situation in a totally altruistic way, but it's the reality of what we want to be and do. Now, Joan, I was just wondering now, as people are dealing with this crisis that we keep hearing about daily. Are there resources perhaps online that can help people kind of come to grips and understand, as you've been saying throughout the show, things are probably bad, but they're not as bad as you think they are, and they will get better, but it will require change on your part?
Well, I've got this new program. I've got a 6-month program I've put together called Build Your Money Muscles for Financial Strength and Security. And it's a 6-month program that's got at least 2 audios and a workbook and a whole bunch of other stuff. And it's creating community. We have weekly calls, and there's a secret group on Facebook where people can share. And the first audio in the series is dealing with financial fear, and it's teaching people the basic skills they have to learn in order to manage their money. And my goal is to walk people out of this. It's not a quick fix.
Sure.
I'm not. The problem. I saw something that one of the prosperity teachers was selling today, and it's being a millionaire in the midst of the downturn. I don't think you have to be a millionaire. As a matter of fact, studies show that after $50,000, people are no happier than people at $50,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
So that you don't. It's not money that makes you happy. It's the quality of your life, and money doesn't buy love. Warren Buffett, when asked, how he measures wealth, he said, "I measure it by how much love is in a person's life," and that's to me that matters. The feeling supported, feeling connected, and so when you ask about resources, to me, at buildyourmoneymuscles.com, you can read about this. It's very inexpensive, and it's a comprehensive program. It's priced for today's market. And so I have that, and I find that it helps to look for the stories. You'll find the positive stories in the midst of what's going on. I think it's not a good time to get into the market or get out of the market. I think it's a time for waiting for most people. And I have a financial planner on our team now. He's going to be putting something into the program too. And he what he does is he's like a coach. He helps people take a look at their situation and decide what to do with their money without his taking a percentage of it. It's just an hourly fee. So get some expert advice from a certified financial planner. I think that's the safest way to go, is a certified financial planner. And learn about money. I think you have to learn the basics of money. My book, Build Your Money Muscles, which you can have for as little as $10 downloaded, teaches really basic financial skills. So but the important thing is that you make a decision to stop whining about what's going on and to make a decision to become financially aware.
Well, Joan, it's always a pleasure to have you here on the program today to just basically redefine and get people to see in a different way, how money is in their lives, and that you can actually change and move yourself into a new direction. And as we've been talking about through this program, this is one of those ideal times that it's time for change, and it's time for a lot of us to change out of the habits that we've created over a lifetime of going out and getting what we want, living beyond our means, and then finding in the end when something like a crash, if you will, happens, whether it's the stock market or the economy in general, that you feel like you've just been kicked out into the cold instead of being prepared. And Joan Sotkin, it's been a pleasure to have you here on our program today. Go ahead and give out your website real quickly.
Okay, we got 2. We got prosperityplace.com, where it's the whole big picture, and this 6-month program I've been talking about is at buildyourmoneymuscles.com.
Well, very good. Well, I'll be sure to place those on our blog and website as well so people can find out more about it. And, Joan, thank you again for joining us here on the program today.
It's always my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You betcha.
Bye.
And I'll tell you what, when it comes to times like this, I'm sure there are a lot of us out there that are feeling stressed and probably trying to figure out ways that maybe we can change all that. Well, joining us here on the program today is a humor and stress management expert. She's also a stand-up comic and humor writer. She's also the author of 15 books, including Not Guilty by Reason of Menopause, Life is Funny, a riveting tale of comedy, hairdressing, and Texas politics, and bedtime stories for cats. Now, I got to tell you, they also got one for dogs, too, as I understand it. So she's going to talk with us today about how we can kind of alleviate all the stress that we're feeling, especially this day and age. I mean, we got a big-time presidential election facing us. We've got Wall Street running and trying to grab taxpayers' money. Where does it all go when we need to get rid of the stress? Well, joining us here on the program today is Leanne Jasheway-Bryant, and she's going to talk with us here about what we can do about relieving stress. And, Leigh, thank you for joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
It must be fun being a stand-up comic and writing books, bedtime books for cats and dogs.
Well, you know, it is fun, but a lot of people think that if you're a comedian for a living, that your life isn't as stressful as everybody else's. And really, it's just a skill, the turning a stressful life into something to laugh at, that everybody can actually use in their life. And
now,
that's why...
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say that's why it seems to be so much fun, is I'm taking the things that most people do whine at, as your last interviewee was talking about, is, you know, not whining about the problems that are going on, but instead doing something positive with them. Mm-hmm. And laughing at them does that.
Now, Leigh, it's kind of interesting because that's what I love about comedy is that these are true social critics. I mean, these people, the more they get under your skin where you feel uncomfortable, the more you realize they're telling you the truth.
Right, and you know, it's the reason that there is the truth in it that you actually resonate with it. That's what makes it funny, is that you feel the truth, and so they take something, or I take something that, you know, is actually causing you some stress, and if you can laugh at the truth of it, then you get some relief.
Yeah, it's either that, or as I'm sure you may have experienced from a time or two doing your show, of people just walking out saying, I can't put up with this anymore.
Well, you know, people do get, my theory is that we all have a bag of stress, and as we get older, we have more balls. We have 3 different kinds of balls in our bags of stress. We have bowling balls, tennis balls, and ping pong balls. And the bowling balls are the big stressors that really have a lifelong impact on our lives. And you know, a lot of those happen as, you know, throughout our younger ages, like, you know, environmental stressors growing up, or divorce, or job loss, or now, you know, coping with the market fluctuations, especially if you're near retirement, and that really has a significant impact on the amount of money you have available to you right now. And then there's the tennis balls, which a lot of times we think are major life stressors, and they're not. But because we react from our reptilian brain, you know, with fight or flight, rather than saying to ourselves, is this really that important? We treat them like they're bowling balls. But the biggest problem are the ping pong balls, and those are the tiny little things that come at us so fast. And they don't belong in our bag of stress. You know, we have an argument with our kid. We can't get our pants zipped up. Our computer runs out of ink. Printer runs out of ink in the middle of printing an important document. Things that don't really deserve our stress energy, but there's so many of them that we wear ourselves out on those.
Now, I was kind of curious, Leigh. Seems like there's a million books out there that talk about how to relieve stress. How much of those do you really believe are effective?
Well, I think that anything you can do that works for you that doesn't harm you. So drinking your stress away is not effective. Shopping your stress away is not effective. But if it works for you, and see, different things work for different people. The thing is, you need to have a plan. And most people, their plan is, I'll wait till I get to the hospital with the heart attack, and then I'll do something. The plan is, you have to actually, as often as the stress is coming into your bag, you have to let it out of the bag, which is why I really like laughter, because no matter what your plan is, let's say you go to yoga and you walk 2 miles a day and you pet your animals, all 3 of which are very good ways of managing stress. But in addition to that, if you can start laughing instead of lying face down weeping into the carpet all the time, you're going to find that bag gets more light.
Mm-hmm. I'm kind of curious, because of today's anxiety, especially as we were talking earlier in the program with Joan about the financial markets and how everybody's stressed. They're either angry, they're depressed, or whatever it is. how have you
Sleepy.
approached this topic, especially? Exactly. How have you approached this particular topic with people, and maybe even in your routine, to find the really funny things in this, so people can go, I know this is a serious thing, but why am I just taking this so damn seriously? Why don't I lighten up, and as even Joan suggests, find the opportunities of what's going on here instead of worrying about the downside?
Right. Well, one of the things I think that we as a society do a lot more than we used to is we seem to invite stress. It's like you do not have to open every quarterly statement that you get if you know that you're going to show a loss. You do not have to watch the news every day to see what the Dow is at, and yet we choose to do it, so we're just inviting more stress into our lives. So one of the things is just don't do that. Don't do that at all, because it doesn't have any value for you unless you're trying to take your money out right away. But the way to find the humor is, for most people, most people can't laugh at something that's highly stressful to them right at that very moment. So what they need to do is they need to look all around them for the things that they can still find funny. So they're letting off little bits of steam so that the impact of the big thing isn't as substantial in their lives. So if you're driving down the street and you see a Weight Watchers next to a Dunkin' Donuts, you go ahead and you laugh at that, and it lets the stress out. Or if somebody, cuts you off on the freeway and yet they have a bumper sticker that says "mean people suck," you laugh at that. And then the big stress that you're dealing with, there's more room for you to deal with that because you're not stressing out. That's what I mean by the ping pong balls. That's what we need to laugh at. You laugh those away, and then those bigger balls have more space in the bag to lug them around.
Now, laughter is really an effective tool. Now, what are some of the real true benefits? I always tell people one of them is because sometimes when you laugh so hard, you're actually pushing out all that nasty air that you normally don't push out, as we do in the Western way of breathing. But what are some of the great benefits of this?
Well, and that is a really good one, because it does actually make you deep breathe, and a lot of us forget to breathe at all, forget deep breathing. But don't breathe so deeply you inhale the cat. You want to have moderation even in your breathing. But it actually reduces your risk of cardiovascular disease, and one of the reasons it does that is that it circulates your blood and oxygen more effectively so that your heart is actually working better. In fact, when you're under stress, your blood pressure and your heart rate go up. While you're laughing, your blood pressure and heart rate go up too while you're laughing. But after you've had a good belly laugh, your heart rate and blood pressure are statistically significantly reduced for up to 2 hours. So that's a real significant benefit. It also strengthens your immune system. Both killer T cells and interferon gamma, we know, are statistically increased through laughter. You secrete an enzyme when you're laughing that kind of coats your stomach and helps protect from gastrointestinal distress, which is another thing that happens when you're under stress. You also secrete an enzyme in your saliva that helps protect from catching things like colds and the flu. I tell people when I spit on them that they should rub a little in. It's better than a flu shot because it's full of healthy stuff. Mm-hmm. You tone your muscles. You reduce anxiety, depression, and fear. You actually bolster your creativity because you're feeding oxygen back into your brain. The law of gravity takes your blood, which your oxygen rides on, and if you're sitting all day, your blood and oxygen is in your hindquarters. It's not in your brain. And that's why we feel like we need a nap or a Snickers bar, and we get a little more irritable midway through the day. So a really effective way for putting that oxygen back into your brain is to laugh.
So that's why people love to go out and go see stand-up comedy, for instance.
Right. It bolsters. It not only makes you think better, but it actually makes you feel better because physiologically it makes you feel better. Studies show that all mammal species laugh. Now, I know it's hard to believe that cats laugh. I can believe rats and dogs, but cats I have a little difficulty believing that they laugh. But I know they make us laugh, and that's a really good benefit. But all mammals have a laugh mechanism. It's all different. I mean, a rat laughter doesn't sound anything like a human laughing. But the purpose of it is to diffuse tension. So really, the fact that we do laugh is a physiological trait that's built into us to help us release stress. And so if you can concentrate on doing it more, you become more effective at doing that.
Now, have you always been someone who has been like sort of the class clown that always made people laugh as you were growing up, or?
Not at all. In high school, I wasn't voted class clown. I was voted most likely to depress people. My role models were Sylvia Plath and Edgar Allan Poe. And that's the good thing, is I was 32 when I turned to stand-up comedy, and it was an accident. I just happened to take this class and got into it. But the fact of the matter is, we are all born with a sense of humor. And as we get older, we hear voices in our head that say, grow up, get serious, act your age, that's not professional, that's not funny. And some of us actually listen to those voices, and it becomes a lot harder for us to access our natural sense of humor. The average American 5-year-old child laughs several hundred times a day, and the average American adult only laughs 15. And so if laughter is this really effective tool for letting stress out of your life, it's the 5-year-olds who have the skill, and we need to revert a little bit to our 5-year-old behavior.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, although you don't have to play in the mud puddles and, roll up doodle bugs, but if you want to, that's fine.
You just gave a really good insight. Let's say that you're sitting at your office and you've been paying attention to the news and it's just driving you nuts. Then pretty soon you start blaming your boss because you're starting to feel like you're going broke and they're not paying you enough, and so that really starts, building the stress, maybe going from a ping pong ball up to the larger ones, maybe all the way up to a bowling ball. But it seems to me like one good idea is that when your lunch comes, rather than sitting there thinking about those things, why not go out to a school playground and just watch kids play?
Absolutely. I mean, any type of interaction. American women laugh 126% as often as American men. One of the major reasons is that women spend more time with young children. And laughter is contagious, and so when you're hanging out, now you don't want to stalk a playground because you could get in trouble for that, but if you have your own children or grandchildren, you spend more time with it. But anything, like one of the tips that I recommend is if you have a 15-minute break and you're not far from a store that sells greeting cards, go there and read some, because there's so many different senses of humor, and you get the laughs so quick that if you can squeeze 2 laughs into a 10-minute break, it's so much better than sitting there checking on the Dow,
Mm-hmm.
And then you're not going to carry that stress over to somebody else in your office. And getting mad at your boss is really bad for me because I'm self-employed, so I try not to do that. It's not.
Darn me, why didn't I give that raise that I deserved?
Exactly. My boss doesn't even let me take breaks sometimes.
Yeah, that's the deployment of self-employment, that's for sure.
Well, actually, there's 2 ways that laughter is very effective in getting rid of stress, and they're called diffusion and distraction. And diffusion simply means that we take stress out as quickly as we put it in. And so if you can laugh things away, but distraction is a fantastic thing. It simply means that if you pay attention to something else for a couple of minutes, that the other thing goes away a little bit on its own. They've done studies where they fake a traffic jam because we don't have enough traffic jams as it is already.
Right.
Exactly. And then they have a group of people and they can't see what's causing the jam, and so they have somebody standing there who writes down how quickly people are getting angry. They're honking, they're screaming, they're cursing, whatever. And then they have 3 other situations where there's a distraction. One of them is called the warm and fuzzy distraction. A golden retriever puppy walks down the street on a leash, and the people watch it. And the second is the sex distraction. A good-looking man, a good-looking woman walking separately walk down the street. And the third one is the humor distraction. Somebody does something funny repetitively as they walk down the street. And in every case where there is a distraction, people are much less likely to get angry. And the humor distraction actually reduces the amount of anger better than the puppy and the good-looking couple. So if you can do something that just takes even if it's as simple as you have a friend who always sends you goofy emails and you have a break, read one of the goofy emails and crack up at it. Go on YouTube and find something that is going to allow you to have a little laughter at, when you find you're really, really stressed out. So seek out distractions, and the goofier, the better. Because if it's not goofy, it's probably too much like your real life.
It's interesting, Lee, too, when you talk about laughter and how as children we laugh like maniacs, but then as we get older as adults, it seems that falls away and we tend to be in this realm of taking life seriously now. Just on that moment alone, what I find interesting is that there seems to be a perception that when you laugh a lot, you're not taking life serious enough, but I think that people who laugh a lot are taking life a lot more seriously than those who are taking it seriously.
Exactly, because if I always put, there's this bumper sticker. I live in Eugene, and there are a lot of people who have this bumper sticker that says, if you're not outraged, you're not paying attention. But if you are outraged at everything, you don't have the energy to do anything about anything.
Right.
If you're laughing at a lot of things, you are actually getting more energy, which allows you to take action on the things that you can change. So laughter is just a form of plugging your batteries back in, juicing yourself back up so that the things that you actually can do, like your previous guest was talking about, the things that you can do to make your financial strategy work better for you, if you don't have the energy to do it because you're worn out worrying about everything in the world, then you're just going to sit back and it's all going to happen to you. But if you laugh off the ping pong balls, you get more energy, then you can actually do something about the rest of the things that you actually have some control over in your life. And the thing about 5-year-olds is that, everything is new and different and they haven't experienced yet. And so they respond with a laugh to all of that. And so if you can kind of cultivate, instead of looking at change with that fear first, oh no, things are changing, it's going to be bad. If you can possibly tell your brain, because that's the reptile part of your brain that does that. The reptile part is the part that's always afraid, fight or flight. If you can simply say, what could possibly be good about this? And it just changes the way when change comes your way, you're much more able to look at it with a different mindset.
It's amazing because I know that in many times in my life I've been one of those types that was distractive in class. I really enjoy making people laugh. And even when I go to the store, it's important for me, not from an egotistical point of view by any means, but just because of the sheer feeling of uplifting, say, the clerk that's there to take care of you. Or, just being kind and polite, maybe trying to find a way you can slip a joke in to get somebody to laugh, as you say, that nice, warm distraction.
That is so important. And the thing is that whereas women laugh more, and one of the reasons we laugh more is because we're nurturing and supportive. So we will laugh when we don't find you funny. So tell that to the guys, But guys, what they do better is they're the ones who are providing laughter more, because to try to tell a joke is risk-taking behavior. If you fail, then you have an ego problem because it didn't work and people know it. But I really think that if you do in every interaction that you have, if you try to make somebody else laugh, that means you're actually paying attention to them. And in a society where most people are on their cell phones and they can't be bothered to relate to the people who are in front of them, that is such a valuable thing to do for other people. And so men and women need to be thinking about doing that more. I have a friend, his name is Nick, and we were waiting in line at a fast food restaurant one day, and taken forever, and the poor cashier, everybody was complaining at her, and finally we get up to the front, and my friend Nick is a big guy, and she looks at him and she says, "Sir, I am so sorry about the wait." He said, "Honey, I've weighed this much for so long it really doesn't bother me anymore." And he cracked her up, and it helped reduce all of that stress that all the other people had dumped into her bag. And not only that, he made his day and my day happier too.
I'm curious, now that we're talking about people who seem to be allegedly self-centered and concerned about themselves, have we just become more and more absorbed into taking life seriously more than we ever used to? It's just interesting when you look back at the days, for instance, of vaudeville. I mean, here people were basically living on almost less than a penny a day during one of the worst financial times in the country's history, but we found outlets and ways that people were having professions to make people just feel better, as you talked about distraction. But, the thing is, have we just kind of moved into a world, especially where we have television, we have movies, we have magazines and newspapers and radios, and everybody is just taking things so seriously. It's like, lighten up, you know.
I totally agree that it's that 24/7 access to all of the bad things that are happening everywhere in the world. And people just haven't learned that just because it's available and you could consume it, you don't have to consume it. You don't. I remember after 9/11 happened, people were tuned into their television stations, and they couldn't leave the house from watching the news. And after a while, a lot of people got into a grief state that was very hard for them to come out of. And so, because I think that's one of the major issues. I think another issue is with technology, especially with kids who have grown up kind of sitting in front of their computers and playing their video games, where they don't have much interpersonal relationships with other people, where they actually have to pay attention to other people's needs and make eye contact and know how to make somebody else laugh without doing it text messaging or something. That's become a barrier. And really, the majority of things that create laughter in the world are not meant to be funny. They're things that just happen inadvertently, and usually when you're with other living creatures. And if you're sitting in front of a computer playing violent video games all day, you're not really cultivating that sense of lighter heart and spirit.
It's just interestingly, like you said, the serious things become funny, and you kind of wonder, as you can even be criticized by others, you find humor in this.
And I do, and I always say, yes, I do, and you don't.
And to give you a funny story, well, it's funny now, but at the time it wasn't. It was how I discovered 9/11. Now, working in the evenings as I did then, I generally would sleep till about 11 or noon, somewhere right around there, and then I'd get up. And this particular day, I got up about 12:30, decided I wanted to go out and have breakfast, and there's a place in town that I really enjoy going to. And so I get in the car and turn it on, and then the radio comes on, and I'm hearing this, and as we get more information about this tragic event. And so I waited and waited as I'm driving. Well, what? It had happened. I had no idea. And this was, 3 hours, after it had happened that I'm getting this radio message. And so I'm driving along, and I'm tuning into all the stations, but it's all the same thing. I thought, wow, something must have really happened, but I had no idea what it was. So I arrive at the place to have breakfast, and as I go to walk into the restaurant, right there is where they have the newspaper stand, and sure enough, in blazing bold, the Twin Towers were hit. And I thought, wow, what's going on here? And so I go in, and they have the television on, which was unusual because at this particular restaurant, there's usually not a television, anywhere around the area like in most restaurants. And that's where I found out what had actually happened. And the funny part today is that the restaurant that I ate at has a B-17 bomber in front of it, and it's called the Bomber.
Oh, no.
And now that's kind of funny, but, then it was kind of a serious thing. But it's like, you just sometimes have to loosen up and cheer yourself up along with others, as you said, because it helps you gain energy.
Well, I'll tell you, my post 9/11 story is that we have a citywide celebration here in Eugene called the Eugene Celebration, and it's a funky town here. We do everything odd, and so it was scheduled for September 13th, 14th, and 15th, so 3 days afterwards. And I was running the comedy stage, and we had serious meetings as to whether we should even have a comedy stage. But we agreed that this was on the 15th that it was going to happen. That if people came, it's an enclosed kind of thing. They would only be coming because they wanted a laugh, and we thought that it was really important to have a sense of community, and if they wanted a laugh, to provide it for them. And I've been running that comedy stage for a total of about 10 years. That was the only year we were standing room only for 5 solid hours. And people came, and they came up to us afterwards and said, thank you so much for reminding us that, even now, it is important to laugh. And there are things that we can laugh at, and it makes us feel better and want to get on with our lives. So, there is value in humor in any situation. I've had friends die who have done so with a sense of humor intact that has made a big difference in my life. We've all experienced things from the bowling balls to the ping pong balls that have reminded us how important it is to laugh. When you said that thing about making yourself and other people laugh, I have a great story. I have an 87-year-old friend named Donna. At 84, her husband had to be institutionalized in an Alzheimer's care unit because he no longer remembered who she was or who anyone in his life was. And she became very depressed, and she's a very perky, optimistic person. And after a couple of months of this, she decided if anyone was going to cheer her up, it had to be her. So if he didn't recognize her, she decided she could be whoever she wanted to be. And at 84, she dressed up as Marilyn Monroe, sashayed into this nursing home, and he recognized Marilyn Monroe. Didn't recognize his wife, but he recognized Marilyn Monroe. And she said that they had dated in high school, which, of course, wasn't true, but he didn't know that. And he was so happy that it made her happy. And so we need to take responsibility and remember that, we are responsible for the way we feel and react, no matter if our stock portfolio is crashing, if we've gotten good news or bad news, we're responsible for the way that we react.
And how long that we actually hold on to that reaction as well.
Exactly. I always tell people that the amount of time between when something moderately stressful happens until you laugh at it is the amount of time you choose to be miserable. It is. I mean, you don't.
No, I agree with that. That's
you
what
don't
makes
think
that
about
funny.
it being a choice, but really, it's a choice.
So see, you don't have to have the bowling ball for the rest of your life. You just have to decide that you want to go ahead and hit a strike and go on a laughter strike, in fact.
Or just dump the bag out somewhere and move on.
Now, I know that the producer had introduced me, and this is interesting enough because as we've been talking about here on the program, laughter is a fantastic natural medicine, and the beauty about it is that it's absolutely free. And God forbid those wonderful side effects of happiness and elation and energy should ever come into play. You take a look today, for instance, you watch television when it comes to some new drug that's out there about some symptom that you weren't aware you had until they introduced it to you. But
Right.
Be careful once you take this drug because of all these bad side effects. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness.
Exactly. I'm just so much more in favor of sticking with the original symptom that you had.
Exactly.
At least you know what it's like.
But then on the other hand, when you gain all those new symptoms, then you realize to yourself, boy, am I in abundance.
There was a Simpsons episode on the other night where Homer was taking some sleeping pill and he ended up sleepwalking and doing all kinds of stuff in the middle of the night. And it was like, that's exactly what they say that the side effects could possibly be.
Now, Lee, do us a favor. If you have a website people can go to, maybe they want to find out more about the books that you've written, maybe shows that you're doing, should they happen to be in the state of Oregon.
Sure.
Or
Yeah.
maybe you've got something going on online that they can just plug into if they're
just
having a bad moment. You said, you need one of those soft distractions or fuzzy warm distractions. Maybe they can go there.
I have got it. There's videos on my website. There's podcasting. I have a comedy show coming up with 20 different funny women from the states of Washington and Oregon, so there's a lot there, and a free newsletter. So my website is www.accidentalcomic.com. That's one word, accidentalcomic.com.
Well, I'll tell you, Lee, it's been a pleasure to have you here on the program today, and it's always enjoyable to have a guest that I can laugh with, especially in these really hard, stressful times, to realize stress truly is a choice, and that's certainly what we've been talking about here today.
Well, it's been a pleasure to speak with you as well, and I enjoy anybody who laughs with me. There's a French woman, her name is Agnes Repellier, and she says, I can never really love anyone with whom I cannot laugh.
There you go. That's a
Yes.
very good piece of philosophy to live by, that's for sure.
I think so.
Well, Lee, again, thank you for joining us here on the program today.
You're so welcome. Have a great weekend.
You bet, you as well. And I'd also like to thank you listeners out there for tuning in today. You've been listening to the Beyond 50 radio show. Also would like to thank our guest, Lee Ann Jasheway-Bryant, who is our accidental comic. So just go to the website, theaccidentalcomic.com. And also I'd like to thank Joan Sotkin for joining us earlier. She is author of the book Build Your Money Muscles. Very important book for those of you who want to change and get a better hold on your financial money muscles to be able to change your relationship with money and how it works. So you'll certainly want to check that out as well. Also, visit us at our website at beyond50radio.com. That is the number 50 with a 50. We do have a free weekly e-newsletter that comes out. It's multimedia, so it's complete with videos, the audio streaming of our programs as well, and also wonderful and fun things to do at the same time. So I encourage you to go and visit that. I'd also like to thank ZRT Laboratory for being a wonderful supporter of the Beyond 50 radio program. And I just let you know that if you are suffering from hot flashes, foggy thinking, sudden weight gain, low libido, mood swings, and other effects of aging, well, let ZRT Laboratory, the forerunner in hormone testing, be your first step to ending troublesome symptoms. Just simply visit them online at www.zrtlab.com. That's www.zrtlab.com to find out how their home collection kits can help detect and correct hidden hormone imbalances. Let testing be your guide to symptom relief and life-changing solutions that begin with you. And again, that's www.zrtlab.com. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for joining us here on the program today. And be sure to tune in with us next Friday, and we'll have another wonderful show starting at noon. And again, sign up for our free weekly e-newsletter, and that's at beyond50radio.com. Thank you again for tuning in. Remember, live your day past halfway.